stop talking, I'm gonna let Keith talk, but I'll keep him as short as I possibly can.
Right, here you will now.
Okay. Edie, you wanna have roll call?
Yes, please. Katie Ashley,
Present.
Hal Bynum,
Here.
Chris Caldwell,
Here.
Lauren Carter, Monique Hagler,
Here.
Mark Sparks,
Here.
Julia Wells.
Here.
We do have a quorum. Is Lauren gonna be joining us, or?
Lauren is going to join us as soon as the class is finished up. So she'll
There
be
she
there.
goes, letting school get in the way. Okay, Keith, you wanna make some opening remarks about
Just first of all, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your leadership and the sacrifice you make to be here and be a part of this and giving up your time. A couple of things. We've got a great agenda, and I'm going to keep my comments short because I want to go ahead and get to the meat of our meeting. Did want to tell you a couple of things. You see a couple of books at your spots. This is one's a common reader. We did a common reader of Westover's Educated on campus this year. Had a lot of conversation about that on campus in small groups. Wanted to give you a copy of that if you've not read it. It's a good read, a quick read, and want to give that to you. The second piece is by Kate Fagan, What Made Maddie Run. And Kate Fagan is a former college athlete, then was working with ESPN as a journalist, has now gone out and is talking about health and wellness, mental health and wellness. And the story about Maddie is a former college athlete several years ago that took her life, and about the issues surrounding that, what impacted her, made her decision, and how it's in the wake of that. And it's an incredible book. But Kate Fagan came here and spoke last spring. We presented our students that were there a copy of this book, and we wanted to make sure, given what we're talking about today, that you had a copy of it as well.
Thank you. Appreciate that very much. First thing we'll do is the approval of the minutes. They are in our book, and I think they were also sent out to us after last meeting. Having read those, I saw nothing that needed to be changed. Are there any things that need to be changed? I'll entertain a motion then to approve the minutes.
Second.
All right. Hal Bynum first, and Katie was second. We'll have a roll call vote.
Katie Ashley,
Aye.
Hal Bynum,
Aye.
Chris Caldwell,
Aye.
Lauren Carter, Monique Hagler,
Aye.
Mark Sparks,
Aye.
Julia Wells.
Aye.
It approves.
Okay. The next item for us to discuss is going to be the student life overview and panel discussion. Keith, you want to?
Absolutely. At this time, we'll call up our Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, Dr. Andy Luter, who just celebrated his 1 year anniversary back at UT1.
That's right. I'm very excited to be here with you today to present to you on our Student Affairs Division, give you some information about sort of what all makes up that division, and then have some conversations about how we work with students when they may be dealing with some crisis kind of situations and mental health concerns here on campus. So I'm going to have some of my staff come up and join me once we get to that point, and I've got a number of our directors in the audience today in case we have any questions that I'm not able to cover. But like the Chancellor said, I've been here in this role as Vice Chancellor for a little over a year. I'm a graduate of UT Martin also, so this is a great homecoming to me to have a chance to come back and assume this role. So we talk about in Student Affairs our Student Affairs core, and that's really the areas that we're focusing on working with students. That Student Affairs core means that we're focusing on ensuring student success, promoting student well-being, guiding student development, and providing for high-quality student experiences here on campus. And we talk about a number of values that are listed there on the screen also of how we're going to do our work with one another. You've got them in your materials also. And I want to also say we've got things on the screen, but also some of the details are a little hard to see that from that distance to the screen, but you've all got them in your notebooks, as you can see. So this is who we are. These are the areas in which they report up through Student Affairs. The first one I want to talk about is our residence life area. We've got 6 residence halls on campus. They're providing a great environment for our students to live and learn. Our overall occupancy has been up 6% over the last couple of years, so we're excited about that. It looks like our housing applications for next year are continuing to trend upward, so we're also hope that occupancy will continue to grow each year. And we're the most affordable on-campus living of any of the 4-year institutions in the state. So we're doing good at our price points and really helping our students be able to afford to live on campus. The next slide really talks about it's a national survey that we participate in, and lots of other residence life programs participate in this survey. Our scores on that beat our competitors tremendously in the program we're providing, in their overall learning and satisfaction living in the residence halls. So we're very happy with this data also. But we also have some maintenance issues. We've got some older buildings that are needing to have some refresh, especially with roofs. Roofs on a residence hall are extremely expensive, in the $1 million range per roof. We've got 2 that will go on in the next 6 months, and we'll be ready to go hopefully when we move folks in this next fall, both in Cooper Hall and on the Browning, one side of Browning. We replaced one side of Ellington within the last year, and then we've got couple of the roofs that we will start to look at, the other side of Ellington and Browning, and then those Village 1 and 2 are 10 years old now, and so there's starting to be some issues with needing to look at some refresh on those also. We replaced furniture in Cooper Hall this summer on all the suites and the common spaces, which I think students were excited about seeing that. We replaced desk chairs and beds in Ellington Hall. You know, one of the things when we spend $1 million on a roof, students don't really see roofs. They don't see hot water and air conditioning work and those kind of things. They see new furniture, they see paint, they see those kind of things. So when we're spending money on our residence halls, we're also trying to think of some ways that students are going to see some change and not just that we replaced. Now, they will tell you if the roof is leaking, and they will tell you if the air or the hot water is not working. So we're going to be concerned about those kind of issues also. But some things down the list as we continue to grow that program and turn the spaces we have into even better places for our students to live.
Andy, do you have a 20-year plan for like the residence halls? I mean, the Y dorms are probably long overdue for
Right.
being.
So we used to have 4 of those. We took 2 of those down and put the village apartments there. I think that's really, there is a plan in housing. I don't know that we go out 20 years. No, 20, probably 5 to 10 years is what we're normally looking at. And then I think that it has a lot to do with what our enrollment looks like. You know, you've heard us talk about this sort of enrollment cliff that's coming, that every institution in the country is going to be dealing with, just fewer possible new freshmen to come in given birth rates and those kind of things. And I think, you know, personally, I think we need to get past some of that before we really think about doing a lot of building with housing. I'm more right now wanting to make sure what we have is great. Those Y dorms, as you said, have been here a long time. They need some refresh, but they also provide us a price point where we don't have to charge a lot for those rooms, and so students can afford to live there. If you take them down and build something new, you're probably going to have a much more expensive room that students are going to be living in if we do something different. So we've got some possibility over at the University Courts apartments too, to think about maybe building new pods there and replacing a few at a time and taking some old ones down. So those are some of the things we've been talking about in housing. All right. Our Captain's Pantry and Skyhawk Shares is another way we're trying to help our students. So Skyhawk Shares is a program where students that have meals on their meal plan that they might not plan to use can share them with other students. And so there's a process where they can decide to turn some of those meals in, and then John Abel in my office, Assistant Vice Chancellor, works with students that are in need to move those meals onto their meal plan if they need that. We also have 2 food pantries on campus. So there's one in Ellington Hall and one in Cooper Hall that we receive donations for. In the last year, we received 7,000 items that have gone into those food pantries. And so students at any time that are in need or have food insecurity can go and just take something out of the food pantry and use it as they need to. So there's not a lot of restrictions on that, and we like that we have that ability to do that. With the Skyhawk Shares, we've provided 733 meals to 64 students in the fall, during the fall semester. So there's a great need there for our students that have some food insecurity issues. Student life, we've got over 150 student organizations, and that includes our fraternities and sororities. We do a lot of programming in that area, and also students have provided 13,500 hours of service with their work through, that was during the 2018-2019 year, and then we've continued to add to that during the fall semester. Part of student life is also our multicultural affairs area. So this has continued to increase. We've increased the programming that is focused on diversity issues and multicultural issues. We've created a Latin and Hispanic Student Association, which was new for our campus. We continue to grow the multicultural graduation celebration, and that's the picture that you see. These are our graduates from the fall semester in December. And then we have a mentoring program that's being developed in that area also. And then a part of that, the excitement during homecoming was our chance to open our MPHC Greek Garden at Unity Circle. And so many of you are around to see that presentation. The number of alums that came back for that was tremendous. Some of those alums had probably not been on campus since they graduated and had a chance to come back and visit, see old friends. We had many of the founding members of those organizations that were here that weekend, so it was a great celebration. And recognize all of what they call the Divine Nine MPHC fraternities and sororities are recognized at that circle. And we have charters for all of those organizations. Campus Recreation is another one. That building also, our Student Recreation Center is 10 years old now, and we continue to find great ways to use this space. We had over 100,000 visits last year to that facility. We offer employment to over 100 students in intramurals, open recreation, fitness programs, aquatics, club sports. We have a growing outdoor recreation program that took a couple of trips, including a whitewater trip this past fall. So lots of activity in that area and ways for students to learn and stay healthy. Career planning and development. We do a lot of programming in that area also. We've had over 400 students that have been assisted with resumes and job search plans and mock interviews this year. And we have 2 annual career fairs that have brought over 40 employers to campus to meet with our students. They've got a new piece this year that they are what they call mobile career services. So they're taking their show on the road and going out to the academic colleges. They've gone down to all the centers to work with students there, and try not to just expect students to go find them. We're going to take that operation out to find where students are too, and get them connected with what is going on in career planning and development. Another part of career planning and development is a captain's closet. So Mark McLeod, the director of that area, has done a great job of setting up what he calls a boutique. So students can go, and if we open that up to show it to you, which we'd be glad to do, it looks like you're going into a clothing store, and you can go in there and try on clothes. We've got donations that come in from faculty, staff, and alumni. And so for any of our students that may need professional attire for an interview or a meeting with an employer, they can work with career planning and development to have access to that. We require them to do a resume and get it reviewed by our staff, and to participate in a mock interview to be able to have access to that. But it's an impressive setup, what they've created there. Disability services is another area, disability services and testing. So with disability services, we've got 400 students that are registered with that office that receive some type of accommodations or have access to some type of accommodations academically or other issues around campus. Testing services is also a part of that area, and we provide GRE, GMATs, end of course, major field tests, lots of everything for our students and also for folks outside the campus. So we're a regular testing center, so anyone in the community can come in and take one of those national tests with us to get certified in a number of different areas. And they've given over 3,000 tests this past year in that operation. Student health and counseling is another one of our areas, and so you can see some of the services that are provided there. So that's both medical care, it's counseling services, and also a number of outreach programs that are provided around campus to help students stay well, and prevention programs. They also have had about 100 more, their numbers are increasing also. They've had about 100 more health visits this year than the previous year, and about 30 or 40 more counseling visits than the past year. And our health educator does a number of programs around campus and also visits the 5 centers doing wellness programs.
You know, you say 100 more to 40 more. What kind of participation do you get with the students on that? I mean, do 20% of the students use that, 10%, 40%? And we were having a discussion about this over lunch, just impromptu.
They, in the fall of 2019, they health visits, they had 2,538 total visits. Now, that's not unique individuals, I don't think. That's no, it's visits. Yes, it's visits. And then with counseling, they had 657 counseling visits in the fall. Shannon, yeah.
I was going to say, we had last semester, we had about 1,500 unique patients that made up our student, what we call unique visits, or unique visits, 1,500
Right.
approximately.
So we're serving about 1,500 students. Okay.
One back on that.
And then we have our care team, and so in a few minutes I want to have some members of our care team come up and be on a panel here for them to describe kind of how that works. But so our care team is part of our professional staff and student affairs. They provide, they respond to Hawk Alert. So a Hawk Alert is available 24/7 at any point. If any faculty, staff member, fellow student is concerned about a student, they can put in a Hawk Alert. And so there's a way to do that electronically. They can also call our office and express concern or send one of our staff an email. That ranges tremendously from some of those are mental health crisis kind of things or medical issues all the way through, Johnny didn't show up for class today and that's unusual and I don't know what's going on. And so they'll talk more about how those responses work in a few minutes. But they also have had a huge increase in the numbers. And so you can see on your slide in fall of 2017, that's really when things got ramped up and we started to really promote the Hawk Alert as a way to turn in concerns. And so they had 45 referrals that year. In fall of 18, they had 130 referrals. And then this past fall of 19, 224 referrals. So we think we're both doing a great job of getting the word out about how folks can express concern and also just continue to have, students that are in need for different things. But I think the campus now is really bought into this is a way, if I'm concerned, that I can put in this report and somebody will check on this student. And so I will allow the staff to be, if they'll kind of come up and assume their positions now. And then just to let you know, we've had some changes in fall of 2019 with that program. We've had the additional of a case manager intern, which I'll introduce to you in just a moment. We've reassigned some staff to provide more resources in our care and our student conduct area. And then we've implemented the crisis response team, which they will tell you about that. But that is our professional staff that are on call 24/7 to address student needs and situations that occur with our students. So I'm going to allow them to kind of introduce themselves and tell you their position, and then I'll turn it over to John to kind of describe a little more about how this works.
I'm Ryan Martin. I'm with Residence Life here on campus, part of the care team and also on the crisis on-call response team.
My name is Carly Jo Archie, and I'm a student intern from Union University, and I'm the care team case manager.
Hi, my name's Shannon Perry. I'm the Director of Student Conduct here at the university, but I also have the distinct pleasure of helping to lead our care team.
And I'm John Abel. I'm Assistant Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs and deal with pretty much kind of any issue Student Affairs you can throw my way. A lot of days that deals with care and conduct. And the things that we've seen, Dr. Rowan, we kind of talk to you about how we handle those situations because, as you can see from those numbers, we've seen this exponential growth. Now, some of that needs to be prefaced by we've asked for that because what we've done, and Shannon, let me back up just a second and say that some of these things don't happen without amazing people who care. And right here, you've got three of them, especially in the floor sitting back there. And there's faculty and our folks in Residence Life that are really mainly concerned about student success. And I can't tell you the amount of work and care and blood and tears that these folks have put into helping some of our students. So I'd like to just have that recognized to get started. But we've seen exponential growth, and that is because we've gone on this campaign, and Shannon's really led that, especially going to faculty, and we've gone to students, and asking everyone to be aware of their fellow student, okay? If you see changes in baseline behavior, report those things. Let us know. That's why we've created these processes to check on students. And that's developed into our care team, and now our crisis response team, which we launched last fall, because we were seeing so many students that were going to the hospital for lots of reasons. But the Hawk Alert, which they can do at care.utm.edu 24 hours a day, they can submit those concerns. They get to that website, we give them a general, like, you know, who do I need to call in this situation? So if it's an emergency, you need to call 911, because the Hawk Alert's not always appropriate. But if you're just concerned about someone, you've seen a change in behavior, that's where that Hawk Alert really comes in. And those things come in, and it hits about 6 people when it comes in. And we take turns taking the lead on who's going to do that. So it's triage. And we get Hawk Alerts on everything from someone said things about hurting themselves all the way down to a stump toe. Okay? We get a little bit of everything. But we check on all of them. And some of them is going and sitting at the hospital while they're dealing with a real crisis situation and waiting for them to be evaluated, waiting for other support systems to get there. Some of them it's going in there and sitting there going, hey, you called your mama. And yes, mama's on the way. We make sure they're okay. But we try to make contact with all those students. Some of them it's just students that haven't been to class in a few days. And that faculty member knows that's not normal for Keith Carter. Do not be there. So they turn in that Hawk Alert. And then we follow up. And that's where Carly Jo has become very valuable and as an intern for us, because that was the person we didn't have who could have that regular contact. After we initially kind of check on, is this student okay, connect them to some resources if that's needed, and that's where the counseling center comes into play. Maybe they need to go to counseling, maybe they need to go to tutoring. Just depends on what that issue may be. But there's where Carly Jo was working week in and week out, following up with that student, and kind of holding them accountable to some extent, and saying, okay, we've provided you resources, are you using them? Okay? Do we need to sit down and talk about other resources maybe we need to use? So we get a flood of those things in, and then we triage them out. We started the crisis response team this last fall, and we've all got to talk quite a bit at 2, 3 a.m. in the morning, sometimes coherently and sometimes not. So sometimes you say, okay, explain that again, let me wake up. But that has been to address those students from, like I said, a lot of different issues that we've had to deal with. And I have to brag also on our public safety staff as a role in this. They've been tremendous, providing welfare checks, calling us, keeping us in the loop with things that are going on with our students so we can follow up with them. So that's kind of an outline of kind of how this works and what we deal with and how we support our students. So Shannon, you may want to go into some of the other details.
Sure. So I think that it's really important to stress how thankful we are to our faculty, staff, and students for helping us help our students. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have the referrals that we have and be able to enact change and sometimes intervene in really meaningful ways in the lives of our students. I think probably one of the biggest bonuses that we've got with our campus here is the size and how well we work together. We react to student crisis in minutes, honestly, around the clock, 24 hours a day. Being able to have the crisis response team for me is huge because it was just me before that. So having others to be able to lean on is wonderful. And I think that we have actually seen an increase in number of referrals. But one thing that I really want to stress is that we are reaching our students before they reach the pinnacle of crisis. The number of students that we had transported to the hospital this year for suicide attempts, and it happens, was less than half the number the previous fall. You sit with a student on the student's bedside after they attempted to overdose, and it affects you kind of greatly. But we're reaching our students now before they reach that crisis. And that comes with education. It comes with pushing out word of what we do. It comes with the good work that Carly Jo has helped us do, being able to make meaningful contact not only with the student, but also with the faculty, staff, or whoever has submitted that report. Being able to give somebody a touchback, like, just want to let you know that we got this report, we're checking on the student. We do ask people, obviously, if it's an emergency, to call 911, but I cannot tell you the number of times that we call 911. So we'll get a report in, and for one reason or another, that person is not comfortable making that contact with an emergency service. And as soon as we see it, if there is any indication that somebody is thinking of self-harm or has, we contact public safety immediately. We've also contacted law enforcement in the region, and we've contacted law enforcement in other states for online students. So I think that our reach is wide, and I think that it's making a difference.
Can you talk through when a Hawk Alert comes in, kind of how does that get managed, and what does follow-up look like if somebody's going to the hospital and those kind of things?
Absolutely. So the Hawk Alert system, we have numbers from fall of 2017, and that's because that's when we launched the online reporting system. When a Hawk Alert comes in, it immediately goes to 6 different we all get it. We have a roster of on-call, and whoever is the person that is on-call is generally the one that takes the lead. However, if there's a little bit of lag time, we're not waiting. Like, we just jump on in. Nobody feels like we've stepped on toes. It's just what we do. We are in a group me, and we communicate all the time, constantly, I guess you could say, which is wonderful because then we are all in the loop. We all know what's going on. Depending on what has happened, if it is a student that is in severe distress, we need to do a welfare check. We'll get public safety out there. If the student needs to go to the hospital, have a crisis evaluation done. We will meet the student at the hospital, and we will have some time with the student. We also have made some contacts with Pathways, who does the crisis eval here at the hospital. And if there is collateral information, additional information that's really necessary for the crisis counselor to have in order to make an accurate evaluation of that student, the cooperation that we have now with Pathways allows us to contact or have that crisis coordinator contact us and get that information, which really allows them to do their job in the best way possible, because sometimes you'll have a student who has made a serious attempt or has a plan, but when they talk to the crisis coordinator or the crisis counselor at the hospital, they won't tell them. But if I have 6 suicide notes that you've written, it's important that that crisis counselor know that. So we now have a mechanism that allows us to make sure that that happens every single time that it needs to happen. So that's huge. We also will make contact with parents. So under FERPA, if you have a concern for a student's health or safety, you have the ability to contact a support person, and we will do it. Absolutely. And depending on what's going on, we'll stay with the student until their parent gets there. We will stay with the student until they have another support person get there. Some of those are, on the spot kind of decisions that we make, but we're always talking, right? And it's not just for mental health concerns too. We had some students who got into a very bad accident. We had one who was airlifted to Memphis, and they were international, and international director was over in Japan. And so there was a whole this coordination that had to be done. And the crisis response team has really allowed us to do that in a meaningful way.
So Ron, when someone comes to the hospital like that, many times they're a residential student, and so what's housing's role in especially them coming back into the residence hall and follow-up?
So we're truly blessed to have an amazing group of student leaders and staff and professional staff. I've got somebody on call 24/7, either professional staff and a student staff member. So we have some flexibility to rapidly send somebody out to go do welfare checks, to see how people are doing, to kind of get more information coming in right away. So when we say within minutes we're getting information coming in, we really are. It's a good thing. And all of our staff are mental health first aid certified and QPR certified, which is the equivalent of CPR for suicide prevention if you guys have had that training. So we're really good at getting quick, rapid response out and checking on folks. When they get to the hospital, when they come back, we do have follow-up, so that's another good reason why we're able to have staff that are trained to have conversations with our students to see how they're doing, get to learn their baseline. Are they improving? Do they need more help? And kind of give us some kind of on-the-scene assessments. We're not counselors, but they're really good at least knowing they're doing better or there's something off, and then letting us know if we need to kind of up our engagement with them a little bit more to see how they're doing. So, like I said, we're blessed to have some good folks that care a lot about our students, and we will take care of them from the time that they are in crisis till after they get back to follow up with them. Our whole goal, speaking for everybody up here, I guess, is to make sure that the students have the chance to be successful at this university. We want them to be able to rebound and to move on and to be able to get better and to be able to still get their degree. So we're gonna get in there and get in the trenches. It's a little invasive sometimes because we're popping by their door, a couple weeks later, every couple weeks, being like, "All right, how you doing?" Yeah, a couple hours later sometimes. Just trying to check in and let them know that we're here. We see that you need help and we want to help you. And so I think it's a good team effort.
And again, Ryan Martin, Gene McCoy, they do a tremendous job training that staff, and they are instrumental, especially for those, nearly 2,000 students who live right here on the backside of campus, of making those contacts when they've had those issues. And then they do a tremendous job of documenting that and reporting it. So quite often we meet weekly and go through case by case, each individual, what's going on, who's talked to who, and having those notes from RAs, from hall directors, everyone in residence lots of making those contacts is instrumental in really knowing how somebody's doing. Because they're seeing them at 11:30 in a hallway, or they're seeing them, in that residence hall, and then you get a real understanding of how they actually are they coping. Do we need to maybe be a little more invasive with our intervention and get them more support? If they're telling us one thing, but behavior seeing another, really having those eyes makes a huge difference, and they do a great job.
Carly Jo, do you mind talking
Question.
through? Oh, yes.
Yes, I'm just wondering if the numbers, if you're keeping numbers and know whether the care team referrals are more at the beginning of the quarter or during exam time or any other time.
I would say that we do keep really very detailed records. Everything is recorded in judicial action software, actually, that I use. And I have not yet had a chance to triage not triage, but to look at the exact breakdown of when we're getting reports. I can tell you that we steadily received reports all semester. There wasn't a time where we had a day that went by that we just didn't.
And I can't think of a time that's just been more. It hasn't been. It's been kind of an up and down. We'll have a week where you may get 30, and then you get 4 the next week. I don't know if it's full moon or what. Changes that cycle, but it hasn't. I haven't necessarily seen a real peak at the beginning or the end. It's been pretty kind of steady.
Observationally, I can tell you that we see a peak in welfare checks before students go home. Anytime there's a home break, there is a little surge there too. But they're right; we're getting them all the time. There's weeks when we have a bunch, and there's some weeks when we don't have any. But it's usually 4 breaks.
We do get, as far as for our freshmen, I would say the first 2 to 3 weeks we will get many, because We have PEP leaders who are leading our freshmen in general studies classes, and our PEP leaders are highly trained in mental health awareness and QPR, and they are really good at identifying if a student is struggling.
But it's not a stretch to say that, you know, midterms and finals are stressful times of the college environment too. So some students that may be able to function fine, other points of the school year, you know, struggle when those big tests are coming on. So, yes.
John, I'll ask you this, and you can refer it to anybody else. And Shannon's, 2 or 3 questions here. Shannon sort of answered it. You can also get a referral from a parent, I would assume.
Absolutely.
Because you really didn't mention that. And what legal barriers do you run into? And I know Shannon addressed this.
Right.
If the student just says, "Do not call my parents,"
That's where, one, anyone can do a hog alert. Hog alert's not, you don't have to log in, you could go on your phone right now and do one.
I could send one in on any end.
So yes, absolutely, please do. So we've had, and we've had parents do that. So parents have submitted hog alerts to say, I've talked to my son, my daughter, they didn't do well in this class, and I'm worried about them. And then we've gone to follow up. So that has happened. Where we get into is with FERPA and information. So if it's like sometimes it gets into a conduct case, unless that student has signed a release, Shannon or myself, Dr. Miller, we can't talk to them, to a parent about that. FERPA has a mechanism where if we feel there is a life safety concern, we can reach out to that parent or guardian.
Can one person make that decision, or is it made in concert with the board?
Generally, in the last few months, there's been times we've gone to legal.
Yeah.
Because it may, sometimes it's not like this person has taken a lot of pills and it's obvious, okay, I need to reach out to a family member. Sometimes it's a buildup of behaviors. And when we've had those buildup behaviors, that's when we reach out on the phone with legal and saying, okay, we want to call a parent and get them involved here. Because there hasn't been any one big thing that has just said, it's a no-brainer, you can do that. It's been a lot of little things building up. And we need to know on the other side, you know, we try to evaluate their support systems. What support systems do they have? And we need to get some other support systems involved here. So a lot of times we make that call amongst that crisis response group, and that's why there's 6 or 7 of us in that group that throw out and say, yeah, you know, we need to make the call.
Out of ignorance, I'm going to ask this question. What if I'm sitting in class and 2 or 3 of us notice that maybe the professor's not acting exactly the way he should?
Mm-hmm.
Can I turn in a Skyhawk relief on Chris?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we would follow
And
that.
y'all would have the ability to follow up on staff and,
Well,
okay.
I talked to Michael actually with HR, and we were discussing honestly that moving toward a model that many universities have, where the care team, because we train every summer, like we are a highly trained team. This is what we do. Many other universities, their care team does handle faculty staff things in coordination with HR, and so that would just be something that is a really good observation and something that would be worthy of exploring.
I think the fine line we have there when you start to work with employees is they're an employee. So the concern about how that professor is in the classroom or someone is in an office we want to be concerned about them as an individual and get them help, especially if they're in a crisis. But if it's an issue of how they're teaching or how they're interacting, that becomes an employment thing, and we just have to balance that. That's not what we do. But the concern you can put in an alert if public safety needs to come, if medical care needs to come, we can help facilitate that.
To go back to your original question, we've had that conversation with legal counsel many times, and our legal counsel's told me personally, I would much rather defend you of making that call to a parent and giving out too much information than not, and something happened to that student. So he would much rather defend us in maybe an error in judgment and making the call than not making the call.
Well, and you mentioned conduct as being something we can't do. Also grades. I mean, we don't talk about grades with parents, all those kind of things. So that's another piece. And sometimes those parent phone calls are also around, like Johnny always calls me on Sunday at 6 o'clock, and he didn't call this Sunday, and therefore something's wrong. And then we find out Johnny studied for a test in the library and everything's fine, and it's Johnny, you need to call your mama because you missed your 6 o'clock call, you know. So it's those kind of things that sometimes turn out to be nothing.
But if mama's worried, I'm worried.
No, right?
Yeah.
It's worth checking on them. Carly Jo, can you talk just a little bit about like what does follow-up look like when you're not always the one that's at the hospital, but the information comes in to you the next day through that system, and you start thinking about how do you need to follow up with professors or students or other things, right?
Okay. So first off, I would just like to say thank y'all so much for allowing me to intern at this position. It's been absolutely amazing, and this team is awesome. So as far as follow-ups, we all get the Hawk alerts, like they said, and from that point on, I normally consult with Shannon. I always go to Shannon to see what my next step should be. So it really just varies from case to case on like the severity of what the next step is. So for instance, the other night we had a Hawk alert on a young lady that I'd been working with this past semester, and it was 8 o'clock at night. You know, I'm sitting at home in my pajamas, and I knew immediately, my gut was telling me, you've got to reach out to that student. So I used my Google Voice account, which I use on the clock, you know, whenever, to reach the students. And so I've done that. And it really just depends on case to case, if it's just a follow-up email or through the care team email, or if we do send public safety, or if we send an RA after them.
Could you tell me a little bit about the intake form and then some of the what you do with students who do enter into a more formalized case management?
So the ones that enter into like a more formalized case management, I've helped them with things such as like finding a job on campus, or showing them that they can go to the captain's pantry to find food if they do have food insecurity. And then I've also linked them with John with getting meal swipes.
Help them get planners.
Oh yes, get planners.
I mean, it ranges so much, but it can be just simple life skills. We've helped students figure out how to call in refills for medication.
And how to take when and how to take their medication.
There are certain students who benefit greatly from the case management system, because then they have someone who is there as a touch base. And you know, that ability to hold a student accountable. We sent out probably 30 to 40 emails at the beginning of the semester. Well, yesterday, yeah. And the response that we got from those emails kind of blew me away. Students who we had had meaningful engagement with last semester want to come back and see us. And they want to just get started off on the right foot. And so that's a beautiful thing. And Carly Jo's been essential in the ability to kind of maintain that level of care.
From a student perspective, I just graduated from my bachelor's in May, but I feel like the students feel more comfortable coming to like our office, you know, if they are scared to go to counseling, and then we can kind of, you know, refer them and push them to go to counseling if that
walk them over,
yes,
take
walk
them over, make
if that is the
introductions.
next step that they need.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned counseling, because that's one of the things that is a great resource in this circumstance. And so the way that we operate with that, all that we're talking about here is what we call non-clinical assistance. Okay, when a student we feel like is crossing over into they need to see a licensed mental health professional, then we're going to make that referral, and many times, as they said, do a warm handoff to take them over to counseling. We've got great resources there that help us with this also. So at this point, if you have any questions, we'll be glad to myself about any of the presentation or anything we've got going on with this. But mental health issues are such a big part nationally with our students, and we wanted to kind of give you an idea of how we work with those here on our campus.
Andy, not just in the Skyhawk care and the alert, but what do you need to better serve our students here at UT Martin?
Sure, that's it.
What things would be on your wish list?
Oh, well, one of the things we've talked about is, as I showed you, we've got
Slow down, that's too much.
We've got some needs in housing, as we talked about. But we also have some key staff positions that we need to get filled. And so Carly Jo right now is working with us as an intern, so she's getting hours towards her Master's of Social Work degree. that will finish up in May, and we have now seen that having her in that position, having a full-time case manager would really do a lot to help our students. So we're hoping to be able to move in that direction and fund that position. But we've got help we need in disability services and some staff there. We've got some needs in student health and counseling to have some additional staff to help with that. You know, I think with all of our areas, we're one-person shops in a lot of places, and so when folks are out on leave or when we've got needs to have annual leave, just different things like that, it just means we don't have a lot of folks to step in and help take care of that. And so those are areas, probably key staff positions are the part of student affairs that's our greatest need.
What programs would you add, if any, to the student affairs? You know, you've got several listed here.
Yeah.
Is there anything you're not doing?
I think we're providing the full array of student affairs programs. Could we expand them? Yes. Could we have more programming money? Yes. Could we offer, students are wanting to have a big concert on campus, you know, those things are not inexpensive depending on acts, those kind of things.
Talk to
But,
Petra.
yeah, and I think there continues to be some facility kind of thing. You know, we've got a pool in the Elam Center that needs to be fixed or done something with. We've got, as we mentioned, we've got a student health and counseling center that they're busting at the seams. We don't have any. I mentioned we could use some more staff. We don't have a place to seat another counselor in that building. So the need for a new student health and counseling center at some point to have expanded staff and offer more services out of that area, I think is another one that's on my list.
Are there dedicated fees that are charged to the student that are dedicated to student affairs?
There are. John, do you want to talk about those?
We get a portion of the program and services fee.
Okay.
So some of that is dedicated money, like there's a health fee that is primarily used in the Shannon Deals area for the health fee. There's some travel money in there that we provide stipends to students to do travel, study, travel abroad. The biggest piece is kind of a discretionary piece. That's the piece we use to fund student programming, student government, campus recreation. All of our 100+ employees in campus recreation are funded by the student fee dollar. So if you look at it, it's kind of a big pot, but it's funding a lot of things. There's probably 14 different budgets that come out of that one set of money, from programming to campus rec, student government, all those pieces.
And one thing I want to mention to you all is, as our enrollment dropped over the last several years, so did that programming for student money.
Right.
And so I think John and Ryan Cheney would tell you that as we build back up, we're still playing catch up to where we were years ago.
Yeah.
And that's a problem.
If a student doesn't come to you but shows up at the mental health, goes there directly, do they then alert you that this student has been there so that you?
The hospital has been really good about communicating back with us. Now, if they
Well,
are,
they'll give the student my number. They'll give the student a number for a member of the care team and encourage the student
To call
to
you.
contact us.
But I think part of that question was if they showed up at the counseling center on campus, right?
Right.
Right. So the different, one of the things, we've got some flexibility in this being non-clinical, that they haven't entered into a counseling relationship with us. So that counseling relationship, once they go to student health and counseling, is going to be a confidential relationship between that student and the counselor they're seeing. So that changes the nature of that relationship. So we don't always know if they've entered into a relationship with a counselor, that hopefully the counselor is taking care of them in that setting. That student could sign a release to allow the counselor to share information with the care team or with housing or their student, the office they work with on campus or a professor. They have the ability to do that. The student could. But they have less flexibility to share information with folks than we do. Now, that's not to say we're not careful about information. We're not just sharing things all across. But the legal guidelines in that we're not mental health professionals are different. And there's some things we shouldn't be working with students on, that we should defer to our staff that have mental health licenses.
Now, if they show up and they're in a crisis and you guys send them to the ER for evaluation, then we know about the crisis team will be notified.
Correct.
So just regular counseling appointments now, but if they're in crisis, we do notify.
Yeah.
And the counselors have the ability to, if they like I said, sometimes we help students find jobs. We're not an employment agency, but I mean, that for some student changes their life, right? So sometimes we'll have the counseling center or counselor will refer somebody over to us because they know that we can help students in certain ways. And so there's kind of it can come back to us in that manner. And we love it when it happens, so.
Out of those number of referrals, how many of those on average turn into a formalized relationship with you all and the student?
That active list, so what we had 244 were referrals in the fall. The active list at one time was probably 70 students.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where they're following up, talking about each week. The care team meets each week also to say who's still on the list, who do we need to reach out to, what service would be helpful.
Use a best practice scale to kind of evaluate the score, where we think they are, and what level of intervention they should be on, and then when we should remove them.
We use, it's nationally
Yeah.
recognized.
I think at most, I think we had about 70 students on that list at one time this fall. So that's 70 people you're trying to have a regular interaction.
This is semi-related, but not really, but like we had 27, I think, in housing that were on that list going into Christmas break. And we just checked on the list and only all of them came back but one withdrew. So I thought that's a pretty good success rate as far as retention and keeping them going.
Are there other questions? Okay, I want to thank my staff for helping with this today and for you having. I hope that you've seen we care deeply for our students. We're doing everything we can to help them be successful here at UT Martin and be partners with our other resources on campus. So thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
It's my understanding that that was just a formal action.
Sorry, the short one.
Yeah. Tab number 3, item number 5, is the UT Promise application update.
I'd like to ask our Director of Admissions, Destin Tucker. There's Destin.
There she is.
Destin is an example of addition by subtraction. So when Destin came on in 2016, it helped bolster our admissions and recruitment program. We actually stole her from the University of Memphis, one of our competitors. So we'd like to think we won twice there. Destin.
It's quite an introduction. So good afternoon. Thank you for having me today. Here to talk a little bit about UT Promise. UT Promise has made a big media splash when President Boyd announced it last fall. We started getting a lot of questions about it. We're continuing to get questions about it, and it's definitely given us some positive PR. And so I'm going to look a little closer about how this may impact UT Martin students. So what is UT Promise? A lot of people have heard about it. They align it with Tennessee Promise, which has been around for several years. And while there are some similarities, there are definitely some differences as well. So it is to guarantee full tuition and fees to eligible students beginning in fall 2020, so coming up this fall. So we are gearing up for that now. As part of that, it is a last dollar scholarship, so it will pay after all tuition is covered by Pell Grants, the Hope Lottery Scholarship, any state grants, and institutional scholarships as well. So it's a last dollar scholarship. And as part of that, students are paired with volunteer mentors. And the UT system is really still ironing that out, but we anticipate that those mentors will be UT Martin faculty and staff once those students get to our campuses. And then students are also required to do 8 hours of community service a year to continue to receive the scholarship. The requirements for UT Promise: students must have an income of $50,000 or less, and they also must be eligible for the Tennessee Hope Lottery Scholarship. The requirements for the Tennessee Hope Lottery Scholarship are a 3.0 high school grade point average or a 21 on their ACT. Most of our in-state students are receiving the Hope Scholarship just due to the nature of our admissions requirements. So if they're meeting our admissions requirements, most of the time they're getting the Hope Scholarship if they're a Tennessee high school graduate. There's been some flux with the deadlines this year. Of course, this is the first year, and anytime it's the first year for something, there's going to be take a little bit to iron out the details. Students had to apply for the Tennessee Promise by November 1st, and that's a statewide deadline that is very well publicized in the schools. The high school counselors are pushing that, so that was part of the application process for the UT Promise. And then they had to fill out a separate UT Promise application as well by December 15th, and these are for our incoming freshmen. These are their requirements for them. They also had to apply to their UT institution of choice by December 15th, and then the last deadline is the FAFSA filed prior to February 1st, which is just right around the corner. It is our hope that next year the Tennessee Promise application will also encompass the UT Promise, but since UT Promise launched after that application launch, they weren't able to consolidate that this year. But it's the UT system's hope to eliminate that step next year to make it a little bit easier for our incoming students. Some key components. It is a last dollar scholarship, and I put a couple of example budgets up there just so you can see what that looks like for individual students. A lot of students whose income is under $50,000 don't have anything left to pay on tuition and fees once all of their grants and their scholarships pay. There is a subset of students, though, that do, and so that's kind of the examples that I have there. Room and board is not covered. If there's course fees tied to a specific course, that is not covered as well. And any other educational expense would not be covered. It's just for tuition and mandatory fees. So our tuition and mandatory fees at UT Martin for this academic year are $9,748. So I put a couple of budgets there. Example one is likely a student whose family income is less than $36,000. If their income is less than $36,000, they're getting the full Pell Grant in most cases, and the full Pell Grant is just over $6,000. So if you take out the Hope Scholarship, which they have to qualify for at $3,500, the Pell Grant at $6,000, and maybe they're getting an institutional scholarship of $1,000, that student could also be receiving some state grants and other things as well. We did add a course fee there. This was an example that the UT system did. I think it's important for students to know it's not covering those course fees because sometimes those can sneak up on students. And so example one, this student, since they're getting the full Pell Grant, has a credit of $502 even after that course fee's paid. So the UT Promise in that student's case would not contribute. But we're going to encourage students to maintain eligible for the UT Promise because it could be that on down the road they may have money left to pay. And so if they continue to maintain their eligibility for it, eventually they may get some money from that. So that student would actually get a refund of $502. Example two, that's a student whose income is probably between $36,000 and $50,000. So they're getting about half of the Pell Grant at $3,000. And so their UT Promise will pay. So in this case, it'll pay everything except that course fee. And so that's just a couple of examples of what a student's financial aid might look like. Are there any questions about that? So I did run some preliminary numbers. I gave Edie the handout for that. We've got those. Okay, they're going around. So some preliminary numbers for our students for fall 20. 51 students applied for the UT Promise through the UT system and are eligible for the Hope Lottery Scholarship and meet the income requirement. Of those 51 students, 0 are actually going to receive any money. So they are going to have everything paid for already without UT Promise dollars contributing. And again, those are our preliminary numbers. For currently enrolled UT Martin students, they are going to get some money. So we're excited that we're going to be able to award some scholarships to those students. Right now, 198 students meet the criteria. They do have to file the FAFSA by February 1st. So if they don't do that, right now the system's saying they won't be eligible for the scholarship. And we're sending out a lot of communication to encourage them to do that. But if they fill out the FAFSA and meet the criteria, their average award is over $2,700 that the UT Promise would pay per student. So we will see some of our students will be able to see some money from this. The UT Promise website is actually very detailed as far as what the requirements are for each population, whether that's new students, current students, or new transfer students. So I encourage you to take a look at it if you'd like some more information on that. Are there any questions?
Questions for Destin?
Are we going to be able to keep up with how many students have come to Martin that would not have come to Martin without the Tennessee Promise?
That's going to be hard to track. My hope is, though, that students who feel like we're too expensive will look at us now. You know, this is really kind of breaking down barriers. Even if they're not going to get any money from the UT Promise, hopefully they're going to go through the process with us of applying for admission, sending their FAFSA. So I think it'll be a couple of years where maybe we can see an uptick in that, you know, that demographic of students. But that's definitely something we'll try to look at.
Because the 51 students who applied probably would have come anyway, since it's not going to cost them anything anyway.
Right. But I think a lot of times they don't know that it's not going to cost them anything. They're here in free college, free community college out in the community, because the Tennessee Promise is for community colleges and for your institutions that have associate's degrees, and none of the UT schools have associate's degrees. And so, you know, this hopefully will break down barriers where maybe they wouldn't have applied otherwise because they didn't know it was free.
That's a good point.
What is the difference? So the 51 students applying in fall 2020, none of them will have any cost that UT Promise actually has to pay for.
That's correct.
What's the difference between that subsection of students and the ones who are already here that qualify that have an average award of $2,400?
Right. I haven't looked person by person in that report, but my gut is they're probably not getting as many state grants. You know, sometimes there's grants for incoming students that aren't available for, you know, upper students, and maybe they're not on as many institutional scholarships. Maybe they've lost eligibility for the institutional scholarship while they're still maintaining their HOPE eligibility. So those are just some possible scenarios.
Any other questions? And the funding, UT Martin will still get dollars and cents if we do this. So this is not going to be a negative for the institution.
The FTEs, the full-time enrollment, will aid us in state costs. That's true. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just trying to take care of Petra.
I appreciate it.
All right, the next item is course transfers across UT campuses. If you remember, I asked about this and then fortunately was told that they already had a study going on. And so I guess someone, and there he is, Dr. Cavalier is going to give us an update on that. Tell us
Yes, I am.
everything's taken care of.
What's that now?
And tell us everything's taken
It's
care of.
all good. Everyone's just transfer seamlessly, so that project's done. No, sadly, that's not the case. I want to just tell you briefly where we are with the project. I put a survey or a summary in your packet, but basically the system pulled together a group of chief academic officers and chief student affairs officers, and we participated in this Leadership Academy, which really was simply a workshop for systems to come together and try and figure out how to address a particular problem. President Boyd's interest in trying to make sure that we're not, I think, creating obstacles between institutions at any level led us to decide this was the one we wanted to take on. Very briefly, what we came to realize pretty early on is that we did not have real information about why students were struggling transferring across to different institutions within the system. And so anything that we were going to try and propose was not necessarily going to address what faculty and staff were observing or what students were experiencing. So we wound up putting together a survey for students who had transferred from one UT campus to another, and also a survey for faculty and staff at all three, but the three campuses where we see undergraduates, so UTC, UTK, and us. The population last year that transferred between one of our campuses, about 95 students, but to your question earlier, we don't know how many of those students transferred, let's say, from UT Martin out to to Austin Peay instead of going to UTC. And that's a harder one to capture. So we may have lost students because of obstacles that we've created for them, which I think some of them we can take away. Where we stand with that project, we have the survey results. I'm going to say very briefly sort of broad areas where I think we're going to need to address some things. And Linda Martin, the Vice President for Academic Affairs and Student Success, is coordinate that from the system. She's at the system level, and so she'll be pulling that group together again. Students mostly are satisfied with the institution they go to. They feel welcomed. They don't feel particularly satisfied with the institution they're leaving. Now, are they angry at the institution and that's why they're leaving, or are they angry after they're leaving with how they're treated? That's harder to tell. But they also feel very much like they get what they need when they transfer to one of those campuses. That's very good. I think what's more interesting is what the faculty and staff and administrators who filled out the survey said, and that was 76, though I want to say, caution us, only 8 people from UTK filled this out. And my hunch is that's because it's not often the case that UTM, UTC students will go in there. So this is perhaps less of an issue. Basically, financial issues, that's always a challenge. Is my financial aid going to transfer? Is it different? That kind of thing. But I think the bigger ones, the issue of will my credits transfer? And that's an issue in some cases. And then the other one, big one, a lot of folks said, you know, if we had a standard general education across all 3 campuses, that would make it a lot easier as well. Which I think, in theory, it would make it a lot easier. That is not something that one says by the March meeting or by the April meeting or the May meeting we'll have that taken care of, because that is a tremendous amount of conversation, coordination, and Knoxville just started a new general education curriculum this year. So I understand the reason why that would be valuable. I think that one is a real reach. Things like the credit transfers, I know some of those areas where we can clean that up and make it a little bit easier. And then the last thing, I guess, is several faculty and several students said we need a central place where the information is located, and it would help very much if we had a common UT transcript, so that the issue of moving transcripts back and forth, that didn't happen anymore. I don't know if the others in the group are going to see that as something that they want to do, but that makes a lot of sense to me. And having one landing page that has all the information about transferring across the different institutions would also be very helpful, and that was something that folks pointed to. So there's some stuff that I think we can immediately hit, some other ones that would be much more involved to try and coordinate. So that's where we are.
There is a question, and I'm trying to figure out how to ask it. I'm just going to ask it.
Yeah.
Is it possible to get everybody to agree? And everybody is not just UTC, UTK, and UTM. Everybody also includes the faculty and staff. Will they buy into it? And they need to.
I think in terms of the credits, I think that is something that can be worked out. Okay. Though I do think that there will be some areas that will be a little bit complicated. There's some things with vet tech, for instance. I've seen instances where that's gotten a little sideways. I think that's possible. Anything's possible, Art, but I really think coordinating general education across all 3 campuses is, I don't ever see it happening because we're such different campuses. What UTK can do with their gen ed is different, not just because they have different people thinking different things, but also they have many more resources, many more faculty to be able to do different things than, say, UT Martin. I don't see that one happening, but I think the others, yes. And I think there's a lot of desire at this campus, I can't speak for the others, to try and help transfer students come in from anywhere and make it easier for them. So I don't think there's resistance from staff and faculty. I just think I didn't realize the extent to which students and faculty and staff feel that that's a big issue.
What about core courses? I mean, are they easier to transfer?
Yes, I mean there's one exception on our campus. There's no need to talk about it, but there's one course that well, I don't need to call anything out, but there is one course that we are a little bit protective of that we don't really take other institutions credit for. But things like composition, math requirements, and those things, those are seamless. It's when you get, I think, into some of maybe the the cognate area requirements, so, lab science or something like that, and sometimes that gets a little bit more difficult. But it's not a huge set of issues. It's a smaller set. But 3 hours that I lose might be the difference between me going here and me going someplace else.
And I'm glad that you're doing this, even if you find that there is not as big an issue as we think there is, because we hear students say, I got 9 hours from Knoxville that didn't transfer here. Well, that's all we know.
Right. But if we lose students outside the system, I mean, we have students transferring, we know that. So these things, I think, will be relevant in part. I mean, some of them are very different, but why do students leave UTM is an important question, as is why do they go to UTC and how easy it is for them to do that.
This program is only analyzing what's happening within the UT system,
Right.
but I'm assuming you get a lot of transfers from other places.
We do, and there are articulation agreements that exist between community colleges and UT Martin, so that helps to make it more seamless. But I think the idea here was, since President Boyd is so interested in trying to create the one UT idea, that this would be the focus for this project. And it is a manageable project. I think the broader transfer issues are, each institution has to work on those, but I think there are different reasons why people leave each of those 3 institutions.
I'm excited. We're looking at it. We need to look at it for a long time, and it's good. I think one of the things President Boyd's doing is really having us in a lot of different areas, getting together and talk about ways to better work together and communicate, and I think this is good.
Well, why is there only one UT Knoxville person on this committee and there's 2 from everything else?
I will just leave that open.
Okay.
I think the answer
No, the answer to the question is that all of the CAOs and all the CSAOs have been invited. And the ones who participated in this are listed there. So
There it is.
there it is.
Okay.
But all were invited to have equal representation.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So thank you.
Bill,
Okay.
thank you. Yes. Comments about the chancellor?
Thank you. Just some quick hits as we're getting ready to dismiss. We kicked off a search for our vice chancellor for advancement. You all know that we'll run our development and alumni affairs operation. In the interim, Gina Swafford, I think Gina's here. Gina Swafford is filling in admirably. She is working me like a $3 mule in the interim, and has been on the road a lot. And we're grateful that we had a staff that could jump in and maintain momentum in this interim period. Really appreciate Gina doing that. Just a quick hit about enrollment.
Do you have a time frame when that person might
We
be
do.
on board?
As a matter of fact, I failed to mention, I'm glad you said that, our able search committee chair, Dean Shadow Robinson, is here. They had a meeting, search committee meeting yesterday. Be doing some preliminary interviews in the next few weeks, and then based on that,
Probably end of February, we're hoping to have candidates on campus.
Okay.
And then after that, it's up to the chancellor.
That's right. That's right. So,
Okay.
and Dr. Robinson's doing a great job with that, and is probably the nicest University of Kentucky graduate I've ever met. So-
Are you teaching his engineering classes?
Yes.
While he's doing
Yes, I'm teaching all the foundation courses. That's right. I know my list. No 200 level. In terms of enrollment, we're about flat where we were last year in terms of looking towards fall of 2020. When you think about applicants, we're at about 7,700, which is about where we were last year. And in terms of admits, about 4,800 of those have been admitted. We are still got, this is a big, strong not only recruiting for 2021, but there's still a lot of students who just haven't made up their mind, and we'll be out canvassing. We had the state of Tennessee, the Comptroller's Office, as Katie knows well, does periodical sunset audit on each of the different entities. UT was audited this year. One of the things that came out of it for us was to really look at Clery, and you guys were all trained in Clery Act and Title IX before your last meeting. So we have spent the last 4 months really looking at our processes, be it residence life, our Title IX equity and diversity, our student affairs office, our public safety, and looking at how we report crime, and that's what Clery is all about, is about reporting. It's been a great process for us. I think we've learned a lot. I think we're better having gone through the audit. We had our hearing on December the 18th with the state, and that went very well. And real excited about going forward. Probably later in the year, it might be a good time. I know we've got to do Clery training once a year with you all, but maybe actually walk you through what happens when something is reported and what we do with that. It would be a good opportunity for you all to learn about that. Capital projects, we opened bids on the Latimer STEM building on the 29th of this month. So we'll be holding our breath. Crazy things are happening with the price of concrete and steel, and we never know, but we're optimistic. We've done the best we can. We're optimistic, and we'll keep you all posted on that as we open those bids and start awarding contracts, and certainly as we start putting shovels in the dirt for you all. I want you to be a big part of that. But the first new academic building on campus in 4 decades, so it'll be a real exciting time. A couple other smaller projects. We had a trimmer, we'll call it a seismic event, on campus last April 30th, caused some damage to our visitor stands at Hardy Graham Stadium. Just yesterday, Petra and I got notice that about the insurance claim, but also clearance from State Building Commission to go ahead and start on that project. So the Art Sparks visitor section will be closed. We're still looking at how exactly that's going to be. We'll probably have a few less seats on that side, and also probably a little lower and wider. So it'll give us a chance to create a new look over there, but really happy for good insurance and blessing from the State Building Commission. The other piece is that we're hopeful in this budget cycle. We have really been pitching the Grove demolition project. That's our top sort of maintenance project that would need to be in the state budget. We have a lot of support for that right now, and we're really excited. If it doesn't happen, Charlie Deal will be looking for another job this year. I was just kidding. But we have been working with our local delegation about that, and it's a safety issue at this point, and excited about the potential for that project. When that happens, that will be, for the time being, be green space, some recreational space. We might put a small stage, something like that. We can do some informal recreation activities, do tailgating, but it would just be nice to have that city block of grass park area rather than those apartments. So we're excited about that. A couple of dates to write down. On April the 13th, it looks like we're going to have Centoya Brown visiting our campus and talking. If you remember Centoya, she was a woman who was convicted and on death row for murder. She was the victim of a sex trafficking group process. She was obviously given a stay by Governor Haslam as he was leaving, and was defended by UT alums Charles Bone and Houston Gordon. She's out. She's got a great book that's been released on her experience and things she went through as a child and what got her into this situation with not only sex trafficking but also ended up with this murder charge. But she's going to come here and she's going to talk about issues around that. We're going to have some conversation. She's going to be here all day. She'll do book signing. She'll do a public event at night. She's going to talk about the juvenile justice system during the day with some of our students, and we're just really excited about the national attention. When they just did our book signing in Harlem and in New York City, they had over 500 people waiting in line to get the book signed, so we're really excited about that.
What was that date again?
It was April the 13th. I think that's a Wednesday, and we'll get you guys invitations to that. We're really excited. Then on May the 13th, finally, we'll have our second annual Skyhawk Retention Summit, and that a lot of folks put in a lot of work on that. Dr. Cavalier's office takes the lead on that, but we'll bring in colleges and universities. Last year from about 8 states came, and we talk about retention. We bring in a nationally known speaker, but we talk about student success and how we can move more students from entrance to graduation and faster. It was a real success last year, and we only charge institutions $50 to participate in that. So it's something that we're concerned about, and we were talking about. We thought, but let's open it up and allow community colleges and other schools to come in. So we expect to have another large group back. Final thing I'll say is we're doing something fun and new over spring break. A group of students from the McWhorter Leadership Institute are going to do an alternative spring break. They're going to take their spring break, and they're going to work with UT Chattanooga and do some urban community service projects and let our students go and work with them, do some projects there in inner city Chattanooga. In follow-up in 2021, we're going to host a group of UT Chattanooga students here and do some rural poverty issues with them and let them do some community service. And we thought it's a nice way to sort of bridge service opportunities with one of our sister campuses, and we're real excited about that. And this is we'll give you an update on that. So.
Football facility, will it be ready for fall?
Yes.
Okay. That's pretty emphatic.
It'll probably be, let's see, there'll be safe places to sit. Maybe the paint won't all be dry. It's going to happen fast.
Are we going to come out okay financially based on
We are.
based on the insurance?
Insurance will be fine. And probably if we built the structure back the way it was, we could not do that. But I think a smaller one, because you know it needs a little to be a little smaller. Unless Petra uncovers that money that she has that we don't know about, it'll be a little smaller.
I assume that everyone, and if you didn't, I would encourage you. There was an elf that showed up on campus this last year, and I would encourage you looking at that, as silly as it might have been.
Or not.
Or not.
Or not. Show it to your mom.
I anxiously await next year to see what's going to happen.
May have to take a year off.
No.
Maybe
no.
Die Hard. Maybe
No.
Die Hard. What do you think?
That would be interesting.
That's right.
Any board members have any concerns or anything that they want to bring up?
I had a question about the Grove demolition.
Mhm.
Is that on THEC's funding request?
No, it would be,
It's so
well,
outside, right?
yes, it is, but it wasn't on they don't have a special demolition area. They know about it. We've talked to Mike and Lou Hanneman about
Mhm.
that, but it would have to come,
Outside of that list, okay, got it. Good to know.
Good to know.
Your residency on the Institute of Agriculture Committee.
Mhm.
Anything to share with us about that?
Well, with the UT Commission? Oh, absolutely. Had a great first meeting, and for those of you that don't know, there's been a unification of the Institute of Agriculture and UT Knoxville. As a result of that, they've gotten several leaders from UT and from the agricultural industry to form a commission to look at agriculture. They just had their first meeting. I would say it was a real success. There were leaders from almost every sector of agriculture across the state, also the grand divisions. And the first meeting really was a look at what could we be doing? What are the obstacles we have Also, it was clear from the producers and the experts that we need to, the state needs to spend some more money on research facilities for agriculture, whether it be swine, whether it be poultry, whether it be cattle, whether it be dairy, that the state was lacking. So it was a really good conversation.
You didn't mention vegetables.
Vegetables, the most important, right? No, but,
Well, the one thing I would challenge you on this commission is that what generally is happening in this state in agriculture is in the meat industry, but it's more about people growing cattle or growing hogs or poultry or whatever. And in the produce industry, it's all about servicing the fresh market. And there are a lot of jobs in agriculture in the end product of vegetables, and particularly, I mean, when you think about Tyson's building a new plant in here, already have facilities here in this state. And there's very little emphasis on that in the state. Pick Tennessee Products, it's all about fresh and encouraging people to farm from that end. Well, there are real good jobs in agriculture when you get to the finished product of things that are being produced in this state to go elsewhere.
Is there a way for us to point out the lack of some research on the swine and poultry and other things and bring that into the garage?
oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. And that's going forward, we're going to talk about our assets.
Yeah.
And what we can do, what we already have, that can be used to address some of these pockets where we need help. Absolutely.
Anything else? I would encourage each of us to continue to talk about UT Martin to students that are in our area and encourage them to come to UT Martin because it's an awfully good institution in spite of the chancellor. And we're awfully lucky to have our chancellor. We're awfully lucky to have this facility and this university here. If there's nothing else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Julia?
Second.
Second. I don't think we have to have a roll call on that, do we? I assume all are in favor. If they are, stand.
Folks, you have goodie bags that were provided to you by the care team.
Okay.
So these are things for you, parting gifts for you. Moniz, thank you so much.
Yes, Moniz, thank you. We missed you.
And good meeting.
You're closer to home than you were, though, right? Than you would have been here.